best dancers from across the globe are about to join me for the audition of a lifetime.
ABC Mondays. Do they have what it takes to compete and be the next Dancing with the Stars pro?
I'm here to win.
Nothing is going to stop me.
Our star judges will decide.
This is what hunger looks like.
It was 100% a wrong choice.
Robert Irwin hosts.
The next era of ballroom starts right here on Dancing with the Stars, The Next Pro.
All new Mondays, 8, 7 Central on ABC, next day on Hulu.
You're listening to Unbound, off script. No outlines, no safety nets, just Beth Curry talking about whatever the hell she wants, or whatever the hell you've asked her to uncover. It's unfiltered, it's unpredictable, and it's officially started. Pull up a chair and don't expect her to stop talking anytime soon. She's a total blabbermouth. Take it away, Beth.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unbound Off Script. This episode is happening because the last one that I did kind of got a bit of a conversation going between me and a lot of people behind the scenes. Some who had no idea that this guy didn't just like disappear off the radar, but that he's actually in prison. A lot of things like that. So I want to start this one different than I usually do because I think I owe you some honesty about my process here as well. So when I was researching the first episode, the viral video, the Kimmel appearance, the 6 weeks, I guess, where Kai was genuinely one of the most famous people on the internet, I came away from that research believing something pretty firmly. I believed he was exploited, not gently and not incidentally, exploited in the full sense of the word by an entertainment machine that saw a charismatic and unstable and unhoused 24-year-old and treated him like a content opportunity instead of a person who might be in crisis, right? I said it in the episode, and I meant it when I said it. The mental health piece of this story was real, and it was visible to everyone standing near him at the time, and nobody with the power to do something about it did a damn thing about it. And I still believe every single word of that, okay? I feel it firmly. That's it. There's no change in my mind on that. So when I sat down to research this episode, like the murder and the investigation and the trial and the decade of appeals, I expected to come out the other side even more convinced, right? I expected to find a railroaded man and a broken system, which I know exists for sure, and a conviction that didn't hold up once you actually looked at it. But that's not quite what happened. My opinion changed only slightly, but it changed. And I think it's more useful to you if I tell you exactly how, rather than pretend I walked into this with a fixed conclusion and simply collected evidence for it. Confirmation bias, that's a thing. So here's where I landed. If Kai McGilvray killed Joseph Gelfi, and a jury found that he did, and every appellate court that has reviewed that finding since that time has left it standing, then yes, he should be held responsible for that. A 73-year-old man is dead. That's not a detail to kind of wave away in service of a more sympathetic narrative at all, and I'm not going to do that to you or to Joseph Gelfi's family, okay? But held responsible in what way and held responsible where? That's where my opinion didn't move, even after all this research, right? I still don't think a maximum security prison in Trenton is the right place for this man. Not because I think he's innocent of the act, because I think everything underneath the act, the untreated mental illness and the total absence of intervention during this exact window when the entertainment industry had its hooks in him, and the years he spent decompensating in a county jail cell before he ever saw a trial, tells me this was never primarily a criminal justice problem. It was a mental health emergency that got routed through the criminal justice system because that's the only system that seems to exist, and that system is not built to treat anybody. It's built to hold them, right? So that's kind of the frame for today. Not was he railroaded and not was he a monster, but something closer to what does accountability actually look like for someone whose crisis we all watched happen in real time and cheered along and then abandoned the second it stopped being entertaining. I don't think 57 years in a cell answers that question. I think it just postpones it. Okay. So with that said, quick note on how this episode is built, because I want to be transparent about my sourcing as well. Everything factual you're about to hear is drawn from primary sources. The actual New Jersey Appellate Division opinion affirming McGilvery's conviction, federal court filings, and mainstream legal reporting. Okay, where something comes only from McGilvery's own pro se filings or from advocacy sites I couldn't independently verify, I'm going to tell you that explicitly out loud when we get there. Okay, this case has a lot of internet mythology built around it, and I'd rather slow down and be right than keep the momentum of a good story going at the expense of the facts. Okay, very important to me. So, last episode we covered the fun part, the viral video, the smash, Jimmy Kimmel, the songs, the few surreal months where this homeless drifter with a hatchet in his backpack was one of the most recognizable men on the internet. Today, I want to do the part nobody put a beat behind. Okay, the murder of Joseph Gelfi, the investigation that followed, and the trial that sent Kai to prison for 57 years, and the decade-long legal afterlife where he's been suing from a cell in Trenton nearly everyone who ever put a camera in his face. So I want to rebuild the timeline the way the courts eventually did, right? Because I think it's a little bit more precise and probably, honestly, a little bit stranger than most retellings. So in February 2013, McGilvery gives that KMPH interview in Fresno and goes viral, right? Over the following months, he crisscrosses the country, being put up by strangers who recognize him from the video. And on May 11th, 2013, I think it was a Saturday, he was in New York and meets Joseph Gelfi, a 73-year-old attorney from Clark, New Jersey. Gelfi invites him to stay the night. And the next day, Mother's Day, McGilvery's plans with a woman named Kimberly Conley Burns, someone he'd been messaging on Facebook who offered to help him find a place to stay in New Jersey, fall through, and he ends up going back to Gelfi's house a second night. And sometime that night, Gelfi is beaten to death. Now, the physical evidence here matters a lot, so I'm going to be pretty precise. According to the medical examiner's trial testimony, cited directly in the appellate opinion, Gelfi suffered a broken neck, broken ribs, and injuries to his head so severe that his ear cartilage was exposed. Blood spatter covered the bedroom. The medical examiner testified Gelfi died from blunt force trauma delivered across multiple areas of his body, his eyes, mouth, ears, the back of his head, his neck, shoulders, arms, and ribs. The next morning, McGilvery meets Conley Burns at the Asbury Park train station. According to her trial testimony, the first thing he tells her is that he's just been raped. He says he called police, but that they wouldn't do anything because the man was a lawyer. He describes waking up with ejaculate on his face. He never brings it up again for the rest of the day. Conley Burns testified she saw no bruises, cuts, or scrapes on his hands or face. She also testified that he'd cut his hair dramatically short with a knife for no reason, he explained to her, and that throughout the day he was, in her words, from the stand, unusually animated, joking, rapping with kids they encountered, quote, offbeat and quirky, end quote. He spends that night at another acquaintance's house near Glassboro. Same story, no mention of an assault, described by his host as weird, but not distressed. So 3 days after leaving Gelfi's house, police located Kai at a Greyhound station in Philadelphia and arrested him. In a recorded interview, and this was played for the jury, he tells detectives that Gelfi raped him the first night and then describes going back a second night anyway, having a few beers and waking up on the bedroom floor with Gelfi on top of him. He says he doesn't remember how he struck Gelfi, could have elbowed him, kneed him, I don't know, is how it's summarized in the court record, okay? He also can't account for where the clothes he says were soaked in blood and urine ended up, and photos from that same night show him in different clothes than what he described wearing. Now that inconsistency, vivid, detailed memory of small talk with Gelfi, total blankness about the actual violence and physical evidence, kind of became the center of the prosecution's case. The trial judge, in denying Kai's motion for a new trial, said the injuries, quote, demonstrated that the assault was far more than just an effort to thwart a sexual advance, end quote, and pointed to McGilvery's changed clothes and changed haircut and discarded phone and the false statement to Conley Burns that he'd reported anything to police as evidence undermining his credibility. A jury heard the self-defense and involuntary intoxication defenses in full. The judge instructed on both and rejected them, convicting McGilvery of first-degree murder on April 24th, 2019. He was sentenced to 57 years with 85% to be served before parole eligibility under New Jersey's No Early Release Act. He'll be eligible for parole in 2061 at 73 years old, the same age Gelfie was when he died. The sentencing judge noted that fact directly to Kai in court. That's the case the jury heard. Now, I want to get into the parts that are genuinely disturbing and where reasonable people land in very different places. So the rape kit. So what's actually documented here? This is the detail that got me, okay? And I want to walk through it carefully because the internet version of this claim is bigger and more sinister than what the court record actually supports. But the underlying fact is still real and it's still bad. So here's what's confirmed straight from the appellate division's own opinion. At trial, Kai's defense requested what's called an adverse inference instruction. And that's basically asking the judge to tell the jury it would assume that untested evidence would have supported the defense. His argument was that the state should have administered a rape kit, tested a towel recovered from the crime scene for semen, and conducted broader forensic testing to support his account of what happened to him. The trial judge denied that request. The appellate court upheld the denial, ruling that under New Jersey law, quote, failure to test does not standing alone justify or constitute a basis, end quote, for an adverse inference instruction, meaning a spoliation instruction requires proof that evidence was destroyed specifically because it would have hurt the state's case, not just that it was never collected in the first place. Okay, so to be very clear about what that legal ruling confirms and what it doesn't, it confirms no rape kit was administered on Kai. That's not internet rumor. It's in the official court opinion addressed head on because his own lawyers raised it. What it does not confirm is any of the more elaborate claims, that you'll find on advocacy blogs, like that GHB was found in Gelfie's refrigerator, or that Gelfie's brother, a former police official, was allowed into the house and ran a dishwasher to destroy evidence, or that a judge assigned to the case had a personal connection to Gelfie. Those specific claims trace back almost entirely to a single 2022 blog post that's been copy-pasted across, a few other true crime sites and at least one podcast since. I could not find those specific factual claims. The GHB in the fridge, the dishwasher timeline, independently corroborated in any court filing, appellate opinion, or mainstream news account. Couldn't find it. That doesn't make them false. Okay, it means they're unverified, sourced to maybe one write-up, and kind of worth treating with real caution until someone produces the actual investigative report that they claim to be quoting. Okay, what we can say with confidence: New Jersey law does authorize the use of deadly force to prevent a sexual assault. So if Kai's account were true and could be proven, this arguably wouldn't have been murder at all. And the state's decision not to run a rape kit on the accused, regardless of whether it constitutes legal misconduct, meant that a central factual question in his own defense was never forensically tested one way or the other. Whatever you think about his guilt, that's a real gap in an investigation that resulted in a 57-year sentence. Okay. I'm kind of opinionated on this one. Where I'd push back gently on the framing, he was falsely convicted because of this, is that the jury didn't only have the absence of a rape kit to weigh. They had Kai's own inconsistent, evolving account, the discarded phone, the changed clothes, the hair, the lie to Conley Burns about contacting police, and a medical examiner's testimony that the injuries went far beyond anything needed to stop an assault. The rape kit issue is a legitimate criticism of the investigation. It is not by itself evidence of innocence. So just want to be clear there. So I'm going to go into what the appeals actually say. Kai has now lost at every level of the American court system, and it's worth being specific about that because it undercuts some of the conspiracy kept him locked up framing that you might see online. So in August of 2021, the New Jersey Appellate Division affirmed his conviction outright, rejecting all 15 points he and his attorney had raised, including the rape kit issue, claims of ineffective counsel, prosecutorial misconduct in summation, and denial of his request to represent himself. In December of 2021, the New Jersey Supreme Court denied his petition for certification, meaning it wouldn't even hear the case. April of 2022, the U.S. Supreme Court denied certiorari, and in June 2025, a federal district court denied his petition for a writ of couldn't read my handwriting, habeas corpus. In August 2025, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals denied his motion to force several judges to recuse themselves from that habeas appeal. Kai had alleged in his own filing personal connections between the judges and Galfie's estate. Those recusal allegations are his claims made pro se and were rejected by the court. They're not independent findings of judicial misconduct. So, as my mouth gets ahead of me, the unfair trial thread evidentially has been tested by 5 separate courts across 9 years, and every one of them has ruled against him. I think that probably matters in some way. It doesn't mean the system is infallible at all, or that the rape kit gap isn't real, but it does mean that the he was railroaded narrative has had a lot of opportunities to be vindicated in court, and it hasn't been. So, that's me. Like I started the top of the show with admitting, that my opinions have changed a little bit because it felt different in my last episode. Anyway, the part of the story that I think is actually the most interesting and the most undercovered, what happened after the conviction, when Kai from prison became a documentary subject and then almost immediately a plaintiff, right? In January of 23, Netflix released The Hatchet-Wielding Hitchhiker, produced by Byrne and Murray Productions, the company behind The Real World and Keeping Up with the Kardashians and stuff. It covers his rise to viral fame and the murder trial with interviews from Jimmy Kimmel's staff and people from his life, but not from Kai himself. The reaction from a lot of viewers, documented in social media commentary at the time, was that the film kind of played his internet fame for entertainment value while treating the murder almost as a punchline to that fame. Like, look how the story ends, right? Without seriously grappling with his rape allegation or the forensic gaps that I just talked about. So Kai's response was to file a sprawling pro se federal lawsuit in February of 2023 from prison, representing himself, no lawyer, against Netflix and the production company and more than 50 other defendants, including people who had been interviewed for the film and a Fresno police employee named Jeff Stryker. His claims included defamation, copyright infringement, and several other cases or causes of action, tied to both the documentary and the original news interviews that made him famous back in 2013. So that case has had a long life. Okay. In July of 24, the federal judge granted Netflix's anti-SLAPP motion. Anti-SLAPP, it's a legal tool designed to quickly dismiss lawsuits that kind of target free speech. Right. And it dismissed most of his remaining claims, though the judge did give him a chance to amend some of them. And by October of 24, judgment was entered dismissing the whole thing with prejudice. But here's the twist. Kai appealed. And in early 2026, this year, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals actually revived one piece of it. One piece. The panel agreed that as a limited public figure tied to the 2013 Fresno incident, McGilvery has to prove any false statements about him were made with actual malice. A high bar, okay? But they found his allegation against Officer Stryker specifically, that Stryker lied to the documentary's producers about Kai's culpability, was enough to survive dismissal on that one claim, and everything else was affirmed as correctly thrown out. I think that's a genuinely notable outcome for a pro se prisoner litigant, right? It's like the strongest evidence in this whole saga that at least one person involved in shaping his public narrative may have said something to filmmakers that wasn't true. It's not proof of anything yet. The claim just gets to proceed. But it's real and it's recent and it's, I don't know, the one thread in the exploited by media argument that has actual judicial traction behind it. Kai didn't stop there, though. In a separate suit, he went after Rolling Stone over a profile that quoted people describing him as prone to fits of rage and reported that he'd once tried to start a fire in his childhood home and was placed in foster care at 13. The Second Circuit upheld dismissal of that case in April of 26, ruling the statements were either non-actionable opinion or didn't meet the actual malice bar, and pointing out that the broader context of the piece didn't support a malice finding either. He also sued a YouTube channel called the Behavior Panel. 3 body language analysts who put out a video picking apart his 2013 KMPH interview frame by frame, speculating about whether he was a sociopath or had been angling to be seen as a hero. A federal judge in Georgia dismissed that case in September 25 as well. This is body language. I have opinions about body language as well. I've actually had some training and I've sat in and seen stuff over the years with my work, 15 years, 10, 12, I don't know, however many years ago. I do have some knowledge on body language. And just like with a lot of other things, it is not always reliable, especially for diagnosing people or making claims about people or their character or anything like this. Is a whole other episode as well. I'm not going to get into it, but I just wanted to say that. Like I said, a federal judge in Georgia dismissed that case in September of 25. Maybe the strangest footnote in the entire saga is a completely unrelated man named Taylor Hazelwood. He sued Netflix separately, claiming the documentary used his Instagram photos of himself holding a hatchet, referencing a totally different book, and implied he might be Kai, depicting him in his telling in a sinister and defamatory light. So the pattern across 4 years of litigation is remarkably consistent. Nearly every claim Kai has filed against the people who built entertainment products out of his life has been dismissed, except the one against a police officer, which a federal appeals court just said deserves a real look. So what do we actually make of all this? I'm going to be honest, I don't want to tie it up neatly because I don't think it ties up neatly at all. There are 2 separate stories kind of running in parallel here, and I think the internet version of this case tends to smash the... Smash? That was totally not on purpose, it tends to smash them together in a way that I think does a disservice to both, right? So story 1 is Caleb McGilvery's trial. Was it fair? And is he guilty of first-degree murder? 5 courts, 9 years at state and federal level. They've looked at that question from every conceivable angle. Sufficiency of evidence, ineffective counsel, prosecutorial misconduct, jury instructions, the rape kit issue specifically. And every single one has affirmed the conviction or declined to disturb it, right? The physical evidence, the extent and pattern of Gelfie's injuries, Kai's inconsistent and evolving account, the discarded phone, the change in appearance, the lie about contacting the police is substantial. The absence of a rape kit is a real and legitimate criticism of how the investigation was conducted, and it's reasonable to be angry about it as a matter of general principle. I know I am. An accuser's own body should be tested when a sexual assault is alleged, full stop, okay? But the courts have consistently found it doesn't rise to the level of overturning this particular conviction because the rest of the evidentiary record was strong enough to support the jury's verdict independent of that gap. Okay. So that's story 1. Story 2 is, did the media and entertainment industry treat Kai as a product rather than a person, both during his viral moment and after his conviction? That one, I think, has real legs. Okay, a homeless 24-year-old with an apparent history of trauma became an overnight commodity in 2013. He was passed between news segments, a late-night couch, strangers' houses via social media, and now podcasts, with essentially no support system checking in on his well-being, right? And then all these years later, a major streaming platform, 10 years later, built a true crime product, I have it in my head, out of his worst day without his participation and per a federal appeals court, not just per Kai himself, may have done so partly on the strength of a source who wasn't fully truthful with the filmmakers. That's a legit story about how true crime as a genre commodifies people, separate entirely from whether the underlying conviction was just. So I think we can hold both of these at once at the same time. The conviction appears well supported by the record, and the industry around him behaved in ways that deserve absolute scrutiny. Okay. So where I'd caution me and you, my audience, is against letting the second story launder the first one, using Hollywood exploited him as a backdoor way of implying, and therefore he's innocent, because those are different claims with different evidence behind them. And the courts have been pretty clear that only one of them is well supported. So that's where things stand right now as of mid-2026. He's 37 now. He's in New Jersey State Prison, still litigating from a cell, having now taken shots at Netflix and Rolling Stone and a YouTube channel, and that cop in Fresno winning exactly one round against the officer, and only enough to keep that single claim alive. Everything about his actual conviction remains affirmed 5 times over by 5 different courts. If you want to go read the primary documents yourself, rather than take my word for any of this, the one I'd point you to is the 2021 New Jersey Appellate Division opinion, docket number A-4519-18. It's public. It's not that long. And reading the trial judge's own reasoning next to the internet's version of the story is frankly a pretty good exercise in media literacy all on its own. I'll try to remember to put all my sources for everything in the show notes. I don't often remember to do that. Sometimes I'm not the one who even does the show notes up. So I will try to make note to put that in there. So it might be there. I don't know. Anyway, that's it for this episode. I know it wasn't maybe as entertaining or as funny as the first one. If you found it funny, I found parts of it funny and sad and important. But I think this is also equally important. If you have any reason to want to contact me, complain about anything I've said today, correct me, please do, because I will absolutely do another episode and make corrections. And as my opinions change, I like to share that as well, because I'm a human being. And as I kind of learn more, I actually admit, if I've been wrong about something or anything like that. So please let me know. Info's in the show notes. If you want to support production costs of the show, that's also in the show notes. Join our Facebook group for further discussion. That's in the show notes. And if I remember to, I will put all my research notes in there as well. I will see you next time.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of Unbound Off Script. Someone eventually had to pull the plug because, as you know, Beth will happily keep talking until the sun goes down. Thanks for listening, and we will see you whenever she finally runs out of things to say. I'm Rob, she's a blabbermouth, and we're out.